right. Everyone sit down. Sit down! Shut the fuck up! Bunch of fucking animals, I swear. Settle in, gents. It's time for your favorite activity of the day. Fucking class. And even better, this one is history. Aww. Yeah. Settle down. This shit is important, alright? Y'all are here to be warriors. And a true warrior doesn't just go to war, they understand it. They live it. They breathe it. Y'all are fucking professionals here, you got that? That makes you masters of war, and masters of a thing know everything about it. We need masters of war to survive. You understand? We got our backs to the wall, gents. The fucking banished and the goddamn created have pushed us into a corner more effectively than the Covenant ever did. Y'all will become masters of war, or we all die. Hoorah? Hoorah! Goddamn right. Now that you chuckle fucks are fucking settled, let's get this brief started. Today, we're going to be learning about the Great War, otherwise known as the Human Covenant War. Don't get it confused with World War I, gents. There was a time that was called the Great War. The war to end all wars. Funny how consistently that's been proven wrong over the last 600 years. Anyway, we're going to go over the basics today. If you want more detailed breakdowns of individual battles, then please refer to some of the books on the Commandant's reading list. Remember, fuckheads, you get points towards promotion if you read those fucking things, so don't be fucking lazy. Steel sharpens steel, right? Alright. Now, we are gonna go over some of these battles individually in the course of this class, but we're not gonna cover the whole fucking war. That's on you if you want to be up to speed on that. But alright. First contact with the Covenant. It came on February 3rd, 2025. Easy date to remember, right? Make sure you're taking notes, gents. This shit is gonna be on the quiz, and you know how the CO feels about those fucking things. February 3rd, 2025. A transport ship en route to Harvest suffers problems with its Fujikawa engine, and it's got to drop in the middle of nowhere. They start broadcasting their distress beacon, following SOP, but we weren't the first ones to get to them. A Kigyar frigate, that's Jackals, for you dumb leathernecks. Fucking write it down. Again, it's gonna be on the quiz. Kigyar. They're fucking nasty. Scavengers. Pirates. They hit our transport and stole just about everything not tied down. Oni was quick to catch on, but the spooks thought it was insurrectionists. The idea of aliens was pretty far from everyone's mind at the time. I mean, we had colonized near 800 worlds by then, and never seen anything smart enough to call themselves ET. Boy, was Oni surprised. It's since been declassified that Oni had a meeting with the Covenant before hostilities really began. They had a nice powwow on Harvest. And of course, it did not go well. Whatever happened during that meeting, the Covenant decided it was time to get rid of all the humans. They attacked, in force, taking Harvest. It was a big moment, gents. Humanity had made first contact, and they were not friendly. Vice Admiral Preston Cole was dispatched with a huge fleet of over 40 ships to retake the system and defeat these alien invaders. They engaged a single Covenant vessel. He lost nearly half his forces, 13 of his own ships, just to bring down one of the enemies. That campaign was hailed as a victory, but Admiral Cole knew what it really was. Harvest was glassed into nothing, and the information the enemy found there led them to other places in the outer colonies, including Arcadia, Second Base, and Green Hills. The Covenant had begun their war in full. Those early years were bad. Not as bad as it would get, but bad. We suffered defeat after defeat. There were a few victories, but they all came with extremely heavy losses. It became clear that humanity could not keep up that kind of exchange. The Spartans, those badass motherfuckers y'all are by now well aware of, they were pretty much the only thing that kept us from being completely overrun. That, and the Covenant's own lack of intelligence on humanity. They didn't really take the time to get to know us before the war began. Guess religious folks don't really think things through, no matter where they're from. Haha. Yeah, that's right, I'm talking to you, O'Brien. You fucking Jesus freak. They were shooting in the dark, jumping from world to world based on information pillaged from their last conquest. The outer colonies had essentially fallen completely by 2535. We were running low on ships, on personnel. The loss of so many of the colonies began to have economic impacts. Food shortages were rampant, manufacturing suffered. Secrecy became our greatest shield. The Covenant's lack of information, our weapon. Admiral Cole instituted the Cole Protocol to try to keep the Covenant from finding Earth. All UNSC vessels were required to make random jumps away from human systems instead of leading the Covenant to other worlds. If defeat seemed inevitable, they were told to wipe their AI cores and activate their self-destruct. Admiral Cole wanted to give nothing to the enemy, and his protocol helped humanity to hold on just a little bit longer, delaying what was rapidly becoming inevitable. The next 16 years were marked by a long, slow string of defeats. The Covenant managed to breach the inner colonies on June 1st, 2536. We fought like demons, every one of us, but it never seemed to be enough. We would win on the ground, and the Covies would just fall back to their ships and glasses from orbit. There were a few major victories, but each one was costly, and almost immediately offset by a major loss somewhere else. It was like fighting the ocean, fruitlessly punching the waves as they pounded us into oblivion. I know a lot of you fucking young bucks were too little to fight back then, but you can remember how it was. Constant fear, never knowing if your world was the next one where the Covenant would show up, the evacuations when they inevitably did, the dead in the streets, the sights of whole worlds burning from orbit. Sorry. It was a tough time. Humanity's never been pushed so hard, and it left a mark. But by God, it also showed us what we were made of. Humanity dug in. We would not go quietly into that great night. We would not give up without a fight. And fight we did. Hero after hero laying down their lives on the altar of humanity's survival. Even Admiral Cole was slain, killed at the Battle of Cy Serpentis in 2540. He took nearly 300 Covenant vessels with him, an entire fleet. And we'll go over that battle in detail later. But what's important for you fuckers to understand right now is that we won a major victory there, but we still lost one of our best. And it would haunt us for the remainder of the war. That was how it was. Every win came with a high cost, and our bank account was rapidly reaching zero. Colony after colony fell, until finally things seemed to be reaching an end. Declassified Oni reports state that by the time 2552 dawned, they predicted that humanity only had months left before total extinction. Nothing that we did was working. And finally, things came to a head when the Covenant discovered Reach. Reach was one of the UNSC's most important colonies. It was only 10 light years from Earth, practically right next door. It was our largest naval base, even the UNSC strategic headquarters. It was, aside from Earth, probably our most powerful fortress, and the Covenant found it in the summer of 2552. They hit Reach with an enormous fleet. It was well defended, including several orbital MAC stations like the ones around Earth, but it was a vicious fight. We gave as good as we got, taking out several of the Covenant's warships, but their fleet numbered in the hundreds. In the end, it just wasn't enough. The enemy took and glassed the world, and humanity lost its last, best hope of defending itself. Things were looking very bad. It was only a matter of time before the Covenant found Earth. Most of our fleet was destroyed. Our headquarters was lost. It looked like the war was over. What saved us? Sheer fucking luck, that's what. And, of course, those goddamn heroes, the Spartans. One of the surviving vessels, the Pillar of Autumn, an older Holocron-class cruiser, followed the Cole Protocol, taking a random jump out of reach. They arrived in the Soel system, and they discovered something there that changed everything. Alpha Halo, also known as Installation 04. The exact details of what occurred there are still classified, and they will be for the next 50 years, but what the spooks at Oni have told us points to a major victory against the Covenant. The Halo installations turned out to be at the heart of the Covenant religion. They believed that activating them would start their great journey and help them ascend to godhood. Fucking fanatics, am I right? I'm looking at you, O'Brien. While Oni's tight-lipped about what exactly the Halos do, they've been upfront that they are weapons of mass destruction, weapons of a galactic scale. One of the very few surviving Spartan 2s, the famous Master Chief, Sierra 117, his motherfucking self, managed to destroy the Halo ring before it could be activated, dealing a devastating blow to the Covenant. This was a turning point in the war. Details are still pretty scarce, at least to grunts like us, but the elites, the Sangheili? God damn it, I never pronounce that fucking name right, but that's what they call themselves. They tell us that the Sanshayum, the prophets, the old leaders of the Covenant, did not take the loss of a Halo ring well. I guess it was kind of like watching the Holy Grail get blown up. They blamed this Sangheili and replaced their spot as guards of the prophets with the Jirohanai, those fucking monsters known as brutes. The Covenant was extremely hierarchical, and the loss of their station was a very serious blow to the honor-bound elites. It was an affront too far, and infighting broke out between Sangheili and Jirohanai forces almost right away. This, honestly, it might be the only real reason why humanity survived, gents. The assault on Earth, however, continued despite the infighting. The Prophet of Truth pushed what forces he had against the Sol home fleet, whittling it down over weeks before landing in Africa in order to unearth an ancient Forerunner artifact. We'll talk more about the Forerunner later on, just because it's going to be important to understand at least a little bit for you guys to get out into the field effectively. But for now, just understand that the Master Chief rallied our forces and assaulted the Prophet of Truth's position. Despite that, he was unable to stop the Prophet from activating the artifact, which turned out to be a portal. The Chief and other UNSC forces followed the Sanshayum through the portal, and it was about the same time that Earth was attacked by an alien race known as the Flood. Those are some more fuckers that we're going to talk about later, but for now, if you never heard of them, just know that they are terrible beyond terrible. Even the Covenant is afraid of the Flood, and these bastards managed to land on the planet, and it was nearly the end of everything. Thankfully, our new buddies the Sangheili stepped in. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess. They glassed half of Africa, but they managed to stop the infestation before it got out of control. Meanwhile, the Master Chief and UNSC forces discovered the Ark through the portal that the Prophet of Truth had opened. The Ark is an enormous installation built by the Forerunner that exists outside the galactic rim. That's right, devils. Fucking outside the galaxy. I guess, according to what I've read, that it was meant to act like an ark, allowing the Forerunner to reseed the galaxy with life after the activation of the Halo Array. Unfortunately, the Halo Array could be activated from there as well, and the Prophet of Truth raced to do just that. A pitched battle ensued. The Master Chief and his Sangheili and UNSC allies finally managed to defeat the Prophet and his forces, killing him and preventing the activation of the Halo rings. This battle also effectively ended the war. The Covenant leadership was killed and scattered. There was infighting in the ranks, nothing holding them together without the Prophets in charge, and others soon followed the Sangheili in breaking away. The Covenant fell to pieces, and humanity was saved after it did. We began to rebuild, producing new ships, expanding back out into the stars, trying to pick up the pieces. We sent diplomatic envoys for the first time since the war began to some of the species in the Covenant, especially the Sangheili, the elites. It was the beginning of a new day. But unfortunately, peace is hard to come by, and even harder to maintain. But that's where we'll leave it for today, gents. I see some of you fuckers nodding off. I hope you paid attention because, again, you know we're gonna quiz you on this shit, and if you fail, you're gonna face the CO's wrath. Alright, devils. Get the fuck out of my face. If you got goddamn dip in your mouth, make sure you're taking your spit bottles with you. I don't want that disgusting shit littering around my classroom. I'll see you all tomorrow. Dismissed.